Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Blair, also known as Bubbs. It is week 10. It is Arizona Cardinals week as the New York Jets get set to head out west to face the NFC West leading Arizona Cardinals sitting at 5-4 on the season. The Jets will look to pick up their second straight win after a nice Thursday night victory over the Houston Texans. Today, we're joined by Cardinals beat reporter Bo Brack to talk all things from a Cardinals perspective. Bo, thanks so much for coming on. How's it going, man?
Bubbs, thanks for having me, man. Should be an interesting contest come Sunday. A couple teams, I think, trending in the right direction. I know I can say that for sure with the Cardinals having won 3 straight.
Yeah, 100%. Cardinals this season have been one of the more surprise teams, I would say, throughout the NFL, leading the NFC West so far through 9 games. And that's where I kind of want to start. We'll get into the offense and defense and all that good stuff as we move forward here. But just want to start your thoughts overall on what the Cardinals have done so far this season, why they've been so successful up to this point, leading the division, and also just your outside perspective on the Jets, which has been a very bumpy year. Coaching change, Aaron Rodgers up to last week wasn't playing really up to his standards. So just what are your thoughts overall on these two teams heading into this matchup?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the Cardinals, kind of, the team I'm covering every day here out in the desert. It's a team that I think has gotten consistency, continuity from their head coach, the coaching staff that returned everybody from year one last year under Jonathan Gannon. And they're able to kind of focus and build off of how they finished last season when they got their quarterback back from injury and Kyler Murray. And we're seeing the consistency from K1. You're not seeing like gaudy passing statistics. You're seeing some big, explosive runs here and there, but you're seeing the consistency I think people look for from this franchise quarterback who enters the first year of a huge extension. And, I think he's kind of been able to steady to waters. The Cardinals have had kind of a gauntlet of an opening schedule, facing the likes of the Bills, the Lions, the upstart Commanders, and they've been able to come out on the other side, 5-4 and taking care of business most recently against the Chargers team, Miami, and then beating up the Bears that I don't think anybody anticipated seeing. Like, there was a lot of excitement this offseason about this Bears team. Cardinals dismantled them, and they've been able to do it in a variety of different ways. Like their offense, I think a lot of people expected big things from this passing attack. They got the dub against the Dolphins, and then they imposed their will on them in the ground game with James Conner and crew last week against the Bears. And then defensively, they've been able to do it the last 2 weeks at home and keeping the opposition's offense out of the end zone against the Chargers and most recently the Bears. So it's been a collection. There's been some, I think, 1 week it's the defense, the next it's the passing attack, the next it's the run game, and they've been able to win a variety of different ways. And it's been a pleasant surprise to see them kind of maybe ahead of schedule here in year 2 of a full on rebuild.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to ask you, get a little bit more into the run game here. And we'll get to Kyler Murray, and we'll get to the weapons on this offense. But you talk about James Conner. I mean, he's been phenomenal this season. Cardinals as a whole, 7th ranked rushing offense in football. Something that is going to be interesting to look for in this matchup is the Jets' rush defense, which is 21st in the NFL, not anywhere where it needs to be. And over the last couple of years, that has been one of the biggest weaknesses of this defense, even when it was playing at some of its best football. But what has caused this run game to be so successful, especially James Conner, of course, 6th right now in the NFL in yards himself, and coming off a huge 200-plus yard performance as a team, like you mentioned, against Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, like, people get carried away looking at Kyler Murray's arm talent and Marvin Harrison Jr., the 4th overall pick, and some nice complementary parts. Trey McBride, the tight end, that I'm sure we'll talk about, and Michael Wilson, a nice second-year player. But, this is a team that is sneakily been built to run the football. Like James Conner, 29 years old, he's drinking from the same fountain of youth as Derrick Henry, where these guys were traditionally running backs, production fall off a cliff. They're thriving. And Conner is one of those guys. Like, he averaged over 5 yards per carry last season. He's close to that again this season, and, hit the 100-yard mark for the 5th time last week in 2024, and just continues to get stronger and stronger. And it's because he's up front. The Arizona Cardinals are built to bully you around. Like, they drafted Paris Johnson Jr., who's now at his natural left tackle position and thriving, out of Ohio State in 2023, 6th overall. And then you got some nice pieces, some guys that they've been able to hit on in free agency, under the radar guys like Yelda Froholt, who came over from Cleveland a year ago, and Evan Brown, who came over this past offseason. They're just geared up to kind of just open up running lanes. And then they take the top drafted or top, consensus blocking tight end in the draft and Tip Ryman out of Illinois. And it all just kind of adds up to them being able to open things up for James Conner and Trey Benson, who had his best game as a pro as a third rounder out of Florida State this past weekend, and Amari Dermercado, who's their primary back and pass pro, but also has been able to kind of take defenses by surprise when they're, trying to slow down maybe what would be, consistently a pass play. He's been able to find some running room. So they are just a team that likes to establish the run. They're a bit bullish in that, and it really kind of sets up what they want to do. And then if they figure out that, like last week, that they can do whatever they want and run like basically 3 run plays and just run those plays over and over like they did against the Bears, they're going to do that. Like they won't have to put the ball in harm's way by putting it up. And I think, it helps them win in the time of possession. It helps them move the football, and it helps them in the red zone. I think that's something that is part of their identity now, even though they've got this collection of a good quarterback who can throw the ball downfield and the playmakers in the passing attack.
Yeah, and you just mentioned there the playmakers. What have been your impressions so far on the Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison connection up to this point?
Yeah.
And obviously we'll get to McBride here in a little bit, but just between those two players, 9 games in.
It's been uneven for sure. I mean, it's been, I'm sure people in play fantasy football expected Marvin Harrison Jr. not be just pro ready, but star ready. Like his predecessors at his position, like the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases, putting up 1,400 yards in their first year, double-digit touchdowns. Like we've seen Marv find the end zone plenty. 5 leads the team, but consistently he's not being fed the football, and that's a product of the scheme and what they want to do and how they want to run the ball and feeding different players in this on this offense. But Miami and LA, like those are the outliers. For the most part, it's been a quiet rookie year for Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think it's mostly lack of opportunities that he hasn't received from what they're dialing up from the offensive coordinator when Kyler Murray's looking at when he reads defenses. So it's not a knock on Kyler. I think he's being told to, Marv's not the first read here. And I think he's a bit of a victim of being a decoy too much. But I think he proved in week, 8 against the Dolphins that, he can be every bit of the playmaker that they expected coming out of Ohio State when he had 6 catches on 7 targets for 111 yards and roasted a guy like Jalen Ramsey en route to the end zone. So, they haven't revved him up. It's a bit like driving a sports car in a parking lot so far, but I think he's proven now, like, when they do call on his number 18 in the passing attack, like he's been there. He's been kind of somebody that's picked up where he was a little slow out of the gates to start.
Yeah, 100% feels like something that could get better as the year goes on. And then just looking at Trey McBride, he's had, so far up to this point is on his way to one of his better seasons so far in his career. And the Jets at times from a defensive perspective have had struggles in the past against tight ends. What has made Trey McBride this season have so much success? And then 2 is that, obviously Kyler being able to find, ways to get him the football and just what has made him have such a big year up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most consistent playmaker he's had. Jerry McBride's in year 3, second in this offense. He had to, for whatever reason, stay behind Zach Ertz last year before they released him. And then he hit the ground running and took off 80 catches, 800 yards, and has picked up where he left off and been able to parlay that into another strong year this year. And they're just leaning into his athleticism, his playmaking ability. Like they feel confident, they don't care if it's a all pro safety or linebacker that's in coverage on him, then he's going to win that one-on-one. And, he's consistently done that. And they're finding different ways they had him a jet sweep on the goal line last week. And then, later in the game, he's hurdling players in the passing game. And I think he's the real deal. And I think he's putting himself in the conversation for one of the best tight ends in the league. And I mean, like we need to see an uptick as far as his touchdown production, but as far as what he's been able to do between the 20s, he's right there in the conversation with some of the best, tight ends in the league.
Yeah, it's funny because you go into this week, of course, James Conner is a huge threat, and now talking about Trey McBride with a rushing touchdown as well last week.
Yeah.
So everybody's getting involved in the rushing party for the Cardinals.
Well, and, like, they have that sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt, like,
Oh no,
they
you're good.
love to run 12, 13
Mhm.
personnel, and, opposing defenses think they can match up, and then you got
Yeah.
guys like Trey McBride, who's just way faster than people anticipated, and he's able to win those matchups, those one-on-ones, and it's a huge weapon for the Cardinals.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to kind of get into the trenches here a little bit with this
Yeah,
Cardinals offensive line. You mentioned having success from a run blocking perspective, and two, I think from a protection perspective, they seem to be having a pretty solid year. And they've lost a couple pieces up front, but they've been able to, absorb some of those injuries, whether it was Jonah Williams going down, Will Hernandez. What have you seen from this unit? And then from a Jets defense's unit coming off of an 8-sack game. So
yeah.
a team that's coming off their best performance last week against Houston, against a Cardinals pass rush that has been pretty steady. What have been your thoughts on them so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, and they can get stronger this weekend potentially if they can activate Jonah Williams, who's
Yep.
coming off. He's been designated return. This is his second week being in that status. Could they add their starting right tackle back for the first time since the season opener against the Bills? And that first half, Kyler Murray said last week like he didn't have to think about if pressure was coming from that side
Yep.
of the defense. So it's a group that's played very well. It's extremely well coached under Clayton Adams, and I think there was a 3-week stretch previous to last week that they didn't surrender a sack, and I think that was a combination between Kyler Murray's mobility. It's not just out there and just gashing defenses for big chunk plays, but it's navigating the pocket and getting out of the pocket and being able to extend plays and make throws. But also, I think Paris Johnson Jr. coming into his own at the left tackle spot. Kelvin Beachum, who's filled in at right tackle, being just good enough, serviceable over there to where they've been able to be pretty decent in pass pro, but also have been propped up by their quarterback's mobility. So it's a great group. It's been the most consistent position group, I think, under Jonathan Gannon since he got here, the offensive line. And like, there's really no Paris Johnson Jr. is becoming this, but there's
Yep.
no household names out there. So it's I think it's exciting for Cardinals players with their number one asset, Cardinals fans with their number one asset being Kyler Murray, to be able to truly protect him, consistently since he came back from his knee injury last year.
And it's Kelvin Beachum for Jets fans, a little bit of a
Yeah,
blast from the past, of course, the former Jet before heading over to Arizona back in 2020. Now, I want to
yeah.
shift over to the defensive side of the football, and I guess I'll start here. Cardinals made a move on defense, trading for Baron Browning. First, do you expect him to play? Is it too early to tell? And then, just from a pass rush perspective, I know Arizona has struggled at times this season to get consistent pass rush. What does he bring to the table if he's out there this week for the first time?
Yeah, it is pretty early to tell. We talked to Barron in his
Yep.
locker yesterday, first time to chat with him since the trade on Monday. And even on the, you could see it on the practice field. He's there with the outside linebackers coach, uh, standing, kind of observing, and then getting in a couple reps here and there. He can't even kind of give his early impressions about how he feels about the defensive scheme. Like, he's so early on. Like, I think just out of necessity, he could be in there. It's a rotation anyways, but they would have to probably keep somebody inactive, but probably bring 5 outside linebackers where it's usually 4, just to make sure they're set at that position. Because I mean, I think he could play. I just think he would play in a limited snap situation, and like they love what he brings to the table. Like, if you look at him, like if you're a box score kind of type fan, like, you're probably gonna say this guy has no sacks. What's the deal here? Like, this guy's not gonna do anything. But then you look beyond that, he's a pressure machine. And he was playing in Denver for the last couple of years, and there was a stretch where he had 5 consecutive games with 5 sacks, or a sack in each of 5 games. And I think that they like his athleticism, because, like, with the Cardinals, it's fan base is learning that they need their outside linebackers to be sound in the run game as well, and they need to be able to drop into coverage. And they like his versatility in being able to do that. They just don't have that sack artist coming off the edge. And I don't know if Browning's going to be the guy to consistently do that. I don't know if that guy exists on their roster just yet. But yeah, I think he's the guy that could get some hay this week. But don't expect it like him to play 50% of the snaps.
Yeah, and you mentioned there are not really any like major sack numbers from anybody on this team, but if there was one guy that you could circle or pinpoint on that defense line,
Man.
who would it be you feel has been the most productive from a pass rushing perspective so far this season?
Yeah, that's been the main issue, right? I'm
Mhm.
probably you have to look interior wise. Probably Dante Stills, a second-year player out of West Virginia. Um, but even then, like this is a sad conversation. Zaven Collins got to the quarterback 3 times on Sunday, a couple half sacks and a full sack, but that's just not been his specialty. Like he's the guy that does say you've got 3 things that you want from your outside linebacker, and like the least of his strengths is getting after the opposing quarterback. So
Yeah.
Dennis Gardeck was their guy. He's lost for the season with an ACL tear. So like you look interior wise, and it's mostly guys like Dante Stills or Naquan Jones, just not your household variety of names, but that unit, interior wise, they've played really good. They've been able to
Mhm.
kind of steady the ship after a tough couple of weeks where they gave up 400 yards rushing, I think between like weeks 3 and 4. So, if you're looking for, they've been productive as far as racking up TFLs and sacks. Most of that's coming from week 2 and then this previous week where they got 6. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for somebody to pinpoint like consistently that you have to look out for, that's going to put Aaron Rodgers on his backside, like doesn't exist in this defense. Not to say that they're incapable of doing it. It's just like there's not that one like war daddy coming across the line that they got to pick up.
Yeah, and you talk about, I guess, lack of household names up front, but then you go to the secondary and you look at Buda Baker, who
Yeah.
has been one of the top players at his position. Of course, a 6-time Pro Bowler, made the All Pro a few times in his career. Just second in the NFC right now in tackles. What does this guy do week in and week out that just makes him so dominant and just makes him such a consistent piece for that defense over these years?
Yeah, he just is always nonstop motor.
Yeah.
And then I think cerebral, or like between the ears, man, he's just got it going. Like he
Mhm.
reads offenses pretty well and is able to kind of be a step ahead of what they're trying to do offensively. So I think that helps. I think opposing offenses do a pretty good job in going away from Buddha. Like he's never been a guy that takes the football away, but he's still able to create negative plays, which is his strong suit. Like if you look at his stats, nothing's going to wow you outside of the tackles. So like he's just been steady, and I think it transcends, his play. Like he's the heart and soul of this locker room. He's been a steady voice there to rally the players, whether through good and bad. And Buda Baker's just been that guy since he was drafted in 2017 out of Washington as a second round pick. So he's a guy that makes an impact in a variety of different ways. And, Aaron Rodgers very complimentary on the Pat McAfee show recently about Buddha. And he's definitely somebody that, opposing offenses are always keying in on when they play the Cardinals each week.
Yeah, and just I guess staying in the secondary, any other guys that you look for out there in the secondary that could be a threat here for the Jets
Yeah,
on
big
offense?
time, big time. I think this is a
Mhm.
guy that's emerging at the NFL level. Garrett Williams played at Syracuse. He's a guy that the Cardinals, I think, kind of benefited from him suffering an injury in his final collegiate season for the Orange. He had an ACL tear and he fell in the draft to the 3rd round. They picked him up. He wasn't ready to start his rookie season last year. They got him though about after midseason, and since then I think he's emerging as one of the better if slot corners in the league. Like he plays that with the size, the violence that you want, but then it also can take the ball away. He number 21 for the Cardinals. Like if you look at stats and next analytics like DVOA as far as pass defense, like he's up there near the top. So he's been awesome in year 2. Max Melton, the guy to Rutgers. We keep going to these guys, in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
He's been great and been emerging in the absence of Sean Murphy Bunting, who's been kind of people have been down on as a free agent addition. They want to see more of the 2nd round pick because I think he's been pretty sticky in coverage.
Yeah, both the Melton brothers come out of Rutgers with Bo, of course, as well. But yeah, Max Millen definitely a name to look for. And just kind of to add on to that, going back to the offense and even here on defense, any other guys that we haven't talked much about that have kind of flown under the radar as players to look for in this game?
Yeah, I mean they've got a couple like they're off ball linebackers and Kazir White and Mac Wilson. And Mac Wilson, you'll see him kind of play. He'll come off the edge just because they've needed that, and he cross trained there in New England and was pretty productive for the Patriots before coming over in free agency. Those are some good players that they have. And then Jalen Thompson's been steady. I think last year he had a really good year. This year statistically he's down a little bit, but the secondary is definitely the strength of this defense, no doubt about it.
Now, I'm also just, you mentioned the secondary, Jets receiving core. Any matchups there that you look forward to, and any matchups, I guess, both sides of the ball in this game that you look forward to watching from for both these teams?
So in the passing games, you said?
Yeah, either side. I mean, obviously, Cardinals secondary, Jets receivers, vice versa.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, you want to see Marv and Sauce go one-on-one. You've got Michael Wilson is their Z receiver. I think he can make some big plays at times. And then Trey McBride against whatever they want to bring. If they want to put a corner on him, if they want to put a safety on him, I think that's always exciting to look at. And then you look at, I think Starling Thomas is kind of an underrated guy in the Cardinals defensive secondary that's taken on number one wide receivers, assignment. I mean, they play a lot of zone. So it's not without help, but Star, when he's been on an island, has been pretty rock solid. So, and then, I mean, Devontae and Wilson, that's going to be the big thing. And the Cardinals they refuse to give up these big plays. And I think that they're going to really try to lock in to where they're keeping everything in front of them. Like they'll let them kind of try to win by kill the Cardinals with 1,000 cuts, and we'll see if they take that. I mean, Aaron Rodgers did it in Green Bay on Thursday Night Football a while ago as a member of the Packers, but we'll see if he's willing to run that game plan again, or if he wants to kind of really get going with these with his new weapons.
It'll definitely be interesting to see how much of the second half against the Texans carries over into this game and really the rest of the season, as the Jets feels like from here on out, everything's a must win.
Yeah. Watching that game, the Texans really they were bit in the backside by playing man. The Cardinals refuse to do it, man. They really just don't do that. So we'll see. I mean, there's been a ton of respect for Aaron Rodgers thrown around, from the coaching staff to the players here. They know what's coming the other side. And if they got to be able to pivot so many different directions with him coming in and his ability to read and blow up what they're trying to do defensively.
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully we see from a Jets perspective, it felt last week was the first time we saw Rodgers actually look like himself. Up that New England game, he looked like himself in week 3, but then after that, started to get banged up, had a hamstring, knee, ankle injury, was all banged up, not 100%. But last week started to look healthier. So we'll see, or if this will be another typical Jets loss where they kind of get your hopes up for a week, 10 days prepared, and they bring you right back down on Sunday. But I really appreciate you coming on. Any closing thoughts? And then also, where can everybody find you? All your work covering the Cardinals, of course, every day.
Yeah, we're just talking about this team, Monday through Friday, on Sundays as well during game day. PHNX Sports on YouTube, PHNX Cardinals, wherever you find podcasts. You want a little bit more insight about this team that's surprising everybody out here in the NFC West. So appreciate your time, man, and hopefully give you enough insight on this team that they're about to face come Sunday.
Yeah, it was awesome. Great to have you on. Make sure to go check him out on all his socials, and of course, YouTube and all that good stuff. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot more content coming your way up until this matchup on Sunday, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in.